Situated near the Royal Palace, in the middle of a very large traffic roundabout, on about the highest point in the city, is a pagoda called Wat Phnom. Guarded by the seven-headed serpent Naga, there are exactly 99 steps to the pagoda forecourt, 27 metres above street level. This is an important site during Khmer public holidays, especially during the Khmer New Year, which usually falls in April at the end of the harvest season. As the legend of Wat Phnom goes, in about 1373, a wealthy widow called Lady Dawn Penn found a large koki tree washed onto her land by the flooding Tonle Sap. Inside the tree, she found 4 bronze statues of the Buddha. She then constructed a small shrine on an artificial hill to protect the statues from river flooding, and it soon became a sacred site and sanctuary where people would pray and make blessings. Today's sanctuary has been rebuilt several times, the last in 1926. The interior has a central altar complex with a large seated bronze Buddha surrounded by other statues, flowers, candles, and other items of devotion and worship. In the story, in 1437, King Phom moved his court from Angkor, and as history suggests, after finishing his new palace nearby, he ordered one of his senior courtiers to raise the mount to today's level. The city that surrounds this temple mount is named after Lady Penn. It is known as Phnom Penh, literally Penn's Hill. Guarded by the serpent Naga, in front of the large seated bronze Buddha are many different artifacts and renditions of the Buddha. In front of them are 2 smaller reclining Buddhas. The Buddha with its feet together above is the sleeping Buddha, and the one with its feet crossed below has passed on to Nirvana. In the forecourt of the temple, we met a man selling cage finches and sparrows. He said it was a custom to release a bird at the temple, a symbol of the soul longing to be free. The idea was to pay him to set one free, perhaps to freedom, but more likely to be caught and sold another day. Like the imprisoned and tortured souls of another time, imprisoned simply because they were intellectual, or just wearing spectacles, or simply because they could be. On the 17th of April 1979, Phnom Penh was taken over by the Communist Party of Cambodia, led by a totalitarian dictator called Pol Pot. Within hours of Pol Pot's coup, the people of Phnom Penh and other cities were forced to leave their homes and march into the country, without exception, young, old, children, sick or disabled. For the next 4 years, the horrors of the killing fields continued, with almost everyone in the country forced to grow rice. Any sign of dissident meant instant death, and as many as 2 million people, almost half the population of Cambodia, perished. We are about 2 kilometres southwest of Phnom Penh's royal palace, this was the site of the Northerners Toul Sleng security prison S21. Used by the Khmer Rouge regime from its rise to power in 1975 till its fall in 1979. Toul Sleng was one of at least 150 execution centres in the country. In the 4 years of the People's Republic of Cambodia, an estimated 18,000 people passed through here. There were only 12 known survivors. The rest were tortured and murdered. The prison was uncovered by the invading Vietnamese army in 1979 and was reopened to the public in 1980 as an historical museum to show the world the cruelty of the Khmer Rouge regime. Previously a high school filled with happy, smiling children, the 3-story Building A was divided into 20 cells. These larger cells were for interrogating and torturing political prisoners. Now they contain a brass bed, no mattress, an ammunition box as a toilet, and a shackle to keep the prisoner immobilized. Towards the end of the 4 years, Pol Pot's paranoia turned on members of his own Kampuchea party, and thousands of his own party activists and their families were brought here to be interrogated. The photo on the wall tells its own story. The barbed wire on the balustrades was to stop prisoners from leaping to their deaths and escaping the constant interrogation and torturing. The classrooms in Building B were divided into much smaller cells. The prison held up to 1,500 prisoners at a time, and they were repeatedly tortured and coerced into naming family members and close associates who were also arrested and tortured and murdered. Here the prisoners were shackled to the walls or floor. They slept on the floor without mats, mosquito nets or blankets. The cells were so small an adult couldn't lay straight. On arrival, every prisoner was photographed and dossiers kept. There are many, many rooms filled with the images of human misery and the suffering of the men, women and children. If they lied, they were tortured. Victims included members of the previous regime, government officials, soldiers, academics, doctors, engineers, teachers, and so many others. Unfortunately, many of the original negatives and photographs were separated after 1979, and most of the people in the photographs seen here on display remain unidentified. These marks on the floor show the actual physical size of the cells that once stood here. Of the almost 2 million people who died in Cambodia during those 4 years, most died of either starvation or overwork. There just wasn't enough food in the country for all those sent there, and being forced to work 80 hours a day didn't help. Because so many died of starvation, overwork or just plain murdered, the Cambodian countryside became known as the killing fields. And it was this baby-faced ex-rubber plantation worker who became the head monster. Pol Pot became the leader of Cambodia on the 17th of April 1975. He served as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Cambodia. When the Vietnamese army forced him and his cronies from power in 1979, he fled to the jungles of southwest Cambodia and died on the 15th of April 1998 after being poisoned. He was never brought to justice for his crimes. In fact, only one of his henchmen ever faced a criminal court. In 1979, a Vietnamese combat photographer was one of the first to discover Toul Sleng. He and his colleagues followed the stench of rotting corpses to the gates of the prison. The 14 bodies still in Building A are buried here in graves outside, with a monument dedicated to them and the many others. Perhaps this number carved in the stone pathway indicates the number of souls that will haunt this place forever.